Life has a curious way of surprising us, quiet moments that gently shift the direction we thought we were heading. My name is James. I'm a 26-year-old architect who recently moved to New York. It's after landing my dream job at a top design firm. Between unpacking boxes and learning to keep up with Manhattan's relentless pace, I found myself facing a simple but necessary task: finding a new primary care doctor. I never imagined that such an ordinary decision would become meaningful. To be honest, I'd always avoided doctor visits when I could. A few over-the-counter fixes usually felt easier. But my new insurance required a full checkup within the first few months. So one chilly Thursday evening in October, I finally sat down to search for a doctor. That's when I found Dr. Adrian. His profile immediately stood out: Harvard graduate, published researcher, and countless five-star reviews. But what truly caught my attention was his emphasis on inclusive, compassionate care. After a few uncomfortable medical experiences in the past, that detail mattered more than I expected. The clinic itself was nothing like I imagined. A sleek glass building downtown filled with soft lighting and calming music. Instead of harsh disinfectant smells, the air carried a subtle hint of lavender. It felt more like a wellness studio than a medical office. "Mr. Anderson." "Dr. Adrian will see you now," the receptionist said warmly. I followed her down a bright hallway lined with modern art until we reached a sunlit corner office. Dr. Adrian looked up from his tablet and smiled. Instantly, the nervousness I'd carried with me all morning eased. "James, welcome," he said, extending his hand. His voice was calm and reassuring. "Thank you," I replied, hoping I sounded more confident than I felt. "I see you've just relocated to New York. Architecture, right?" I nodded, surprised he remembered so easily. For the first time since moving, I felt a small sense of grounding, like the city wasn't quite as overwhelming anymore. "That explains the detail in your medical history," he added with a friendly smile. "Most people aren't this thorough." "Occupational habit," I said. "Architects notice everything," he laughed softly. "That definitely makes my job easier." As the checkup began, Dr. Adrian explained each step clearly, never rushing. His calm presence made the experience feel less clinical and more human. "Your blood pressure is slightly elevated," he said gently. "That happens to a lot of people during exams." "I guess I'm a little anxious," I admitted. "That's completely normal," he replied. "Let's take a moment. Talking usually helps." And it did. What started as a routine appointment turned into an easy, genuine conversation. We talked about work, adjusting to new cities, and the challenges of chasing big dreams. He shared stories from his years in Chicago, and I found myself smiling more than I expected to in a doctor's office. By the time the exam finished, the tension I'd carried in had completely faded. "You're in great shape," he said, setting his tablet aside. "Keep doing what you're doing." Relief washed over me along with something quieter: gratitude. As I stood to leave, he added, "New York can be demanding. Don't forget to take care of yourself, not just physically, but mentally too." "I'll try," I said. He smiled. "Good. You've got a lot going for you. Don't let the city wear you down." Walking out of the clinic that morning, I realized what stayed with me wasn't the checkup itself. It was the feeling of being truly seen, of having a conversation that felt genuine in a city known for moving too fast. And somehow, I knew that this wouldn't be the last time our paths crossed. That combination will do it every time. His tone was light, but something subtle had changed in the room. Not spoken, just felt. When I turned slightly, our eyes met. His expression was warm, steady, and thoughtful. "James," he said after a pause, "I need to be honest with you." I waited. "I take professional boundaries seriously," he continued calmly. "But today reminded me how important it is to recognize when something feels complicated." I searched his face, trying to understand. "You mean professionally?" He nodded. "Yes, and personally." The room felt quieter somehow. Outside the window, New York continued, as always, cars passing, voices drifting upward, but inside that office, time seemed to slow. After a moment, he took a small step back, straightening his coat as if grounding himself. think it would be best if you scheduled future checkups with another physician, he said gently. It's the responsible choice. I nodded, even though the words surprised me more than I expected. If that's what you think is best, I replied. He hesitated, then reached for a notepad. He wrote something down, tore off the page, and handed it to me. This isn't a medical referral, he said quietly. It's my personal number. No expectations. No pressure. But if you ever want to talk outside of this setting, I'd welcome that. I looked at the paper in my hand. Maybe conversation really is the best kind of medicine, I said softly. He smiled an expression that carried both apology and hope. Maybe it is. That evening, without planning it, I found myself at a small cafe near the medical center. Something about the unfinished conversation had pulled me there. He was already seated by the window, dressed casually this time. No white coat, no formality. When he looked up, the warmth in his eyes was familiar, but gentler now. I wasn't sure you'd come, he admitted. Neither was I said honestly. But I thought we both deserved a second conversation. He relaxed, leaning back slightly. You were easy to talk to earlier, he said. Even when you were nervous. I still am, I laughed quietly. Just about different things now. He smiled, the kind of smile that reaches the eyes. We talked for hours. About New York. About architecture and medicine. About starting over in a city that never slows down. For the first time since moving there, I didn't feel like a newcomer or a patient, but simply a person being understood. When the cafe lights dimmed, stood and nodded toward the door. Walk with me? Outside, the street shimmered with reflected city lights. We walked without rushing, side by side, learning how honesty sometimes begins with restraint. I've never felt so conflicted in a professional moment before, he admitted quietly. You handled it with integrity, I said. Not everyone would. He let out a soft, relieved laugh. It didn't feel easy. Important things rarely are, I replied, as we continued walking. I realized something simple but profound, for the first time since arriving in New York. The city didn't feel overwhelming. It felt possible. For a moment, we simply sat there, the silence heavy with everything neither of us knew how to say out loud. It wasn't awkward, just full. The kind of quiet that only happens when something important is forming. There's no going back after tonight. Adrian said softly, his voice steady but thoughtful. Not to pretending this was just a routine appointment. I know, I replied quietly. And I don't want to pretend. He studied me for a long moment, his expression careful, searching not for permission but for certainty. Outside the tall windows, the city lights shimmered, reflections dancing across the glass as New York continued its restless movement. Are you sure this is what you want? He asked gently. Yes, I answered without hesitation. The question seemed to settle something in him. He leaned back slightly, exhaling as if releasing a weight he'd been carrying all day. There was no rush, no impulse, no clarity. We talked for what felt like hours. The conversation moved naturally, shifting between quiet laughter and honest reflection. He spoke about the pressure of his work, the responsibility that followed him long after the clinic doors closed, and how easy it was to forget he was more than his title. I told him about my own loneliness, the feeling of being surrounded by people in a city that never sleeps, yet still feeling unseen, about chasing dreams that sometimes leave you wondering what you sacrificed along the way. This wasn't supposed to happen, Adrian admitted softly. But I don't think that makes it wrong. Maybe some things happen because they're meant to, I said, even when the timing isn't perfect. The silence that followed felt warm, not empty. Outside, cars passed, lights changed, people hurried on with their lives. Inside, everything felt still, suspended in a moment that belonged only to us. I don't even have the right words for this, he said with a small, uncertain smile. Then don't rush to name it, I replied. Just let it exist. He nodded, relieved by that answer. Have you thought about what comes next? He asked after a while. Honestly, I said, I've been thinking about that since the moment I stepped into your office. His expression softened, vulnerability replacing caution. This isn't just curiosity for me, he said quietly. It feels real. I feel it too. I want to do this the right way, he continued. Time. Real conversations. Space away from clinics and expectations. I want to know you, not a chart, not a story. I smiled. The kind of beginning that starts quietly, I said, and grows naturally. I'd like that, he replied, as we stood to leave. There was no dramatic gesture, no grand promise, just an understanding. What began as a routine appointment had turned into something unexpected, fragile and real. And as we stepped back into the city, neither of us felt the urge to walk away. That night stretched far beyond sunset. We talked for hours about childhood dreams, fears, and the winding roads that had led us both to New York. Adrian told me how watching his grandmother battle cancer had shaped his sense of purpose. How medicine became more than a profession for him. It became a calling. In return, I shared my passion for sustainable architecture, designing spaces meant to heal, inspire, and bring comfort to people who needed it most. By the time dawn painted the skyline in soft pinks and golds, we stood quietly by the window, coffee mugs warming our hands as the city slowly woke beneath us. Stay for breakfast, Adrian said with a small smile. I make a great eggs Benedict. Only if you let me help, I replied. He laughed, open and genuine. Deal. But fair warning, kitchen safety still falls under my professional expertise. The weeks that followed blurred into something steady and reassuring, a rhythm that belonged to us. Between long shifts and late-night messages, we made time, real time for each other. Soon, small signs of shared life appeared without effort. A toothbrush beside his, a sweater forgotten on a chair. One evening when I worked late, a delivery arrived, dinner from my favorite Thai place. Inside was a note, eat something healthy. Doctor's orders. See you tonight. It became our language. Quiet gestures woven into everyday life. He left medical journals open, with sticky notes marking articles he thought I'd enjoy. I sketched building concepts along the margins of his morning newspaper. Of course, it wasn't always easy. The medical world is small, and questions eventually surfaced about how we'd met. Adrian faced it calmly. He never hid the truth, and made it clear he had transferred my care as soon as our connection became personal. Let people talk, he said one night. I've never been happier. What surprised us both was how deep the emotional bond grew. Adrian shared the weight he carried, the long nights, the fear of burnout, the loss of patience, and his dream of opening a community health clinic for LGBTQ+ youth. I shared my doubts, my complicated relationship with family, and the ambitions that kept me moving forward when things felt uncertain. One evening, as the city glowed quietly beyond his apartment windows, Adrian broke the silence. Move in with me, he said simply. The words caught me off guard, but they didn't feel rushed. I know it's fast, he added, but I don't want to keep living like we're visiting each other's lives. I smiled, emotion rising unexpectedly. Are you sure? My reputation comes from being a good doctor, he said gently. But I'm also a man who knows what he wants. And I'm done hiding that. Moving in together felt natural. My furniture blended easily with his modern style. My art supplies found a home beside his medical books. Sharing space deepened everything. I loved watching him prepare for workfocused.com. He loved catching me sketching late at night, always bringing coffee and encouragement. 5 months later, life surprised us again. I was immersed in a major sustainable housing project when Adrian started acting distant late nights. Shorter calls, unexplained schedule changes. I tried not to jump to conclusions, but worry crept in. Then one evening, he texted, "Meet me downtown." The address led to a newly renovated space, empty, bright, full of possibility. What do you think? He asked as I walked around. It's perfect, I said honestly. The light, the layout, it all feels right. He took a breath and pulled out a folder. Remember my dream of opening an LGBTQ+ community clinic? He said, I want to make it real, and I was hoping you'd design the space. I froze not from doubt, but from the meaning behind it. You want us to build this together? I want everything with you, Adrian replied quietly. Life, love, and purpose. You make me better at what I do. That clinic became our shared dream. For months, we poured ourselves into it, my eco-friendly designs paired with his vision of inclusive, compassionate healthcare. Natural textures, soft colors, thoughtful layouts meant to make people feel safe the moment they walked in, and through it all, we realized something important. We weren't just building a clinic. We were building a life. We built a life of partnership neither of us had expected but both knew was right. His energy was contagious. While he organized support programs, I focused on perfecting the design. Many nights we worked side by side, tired but happy, watching ideas turn into something tangible. The night before the grand opening, we stood together in the finished space. Soft lighting bathed the room. Artwork from local LGBTQ+ artists decorated the walls. Cozy seating replaced cold waiting chairs. The space finally reflected the dream we had imagined. It's perfect, Adrian whispered, smiling. Just like the day you first walked into my exam room. You mean the day you tried way too hard to act professional? I teased. He laughed, and for a moment, it felt like the beginning all over again, just brighter, stronger, and real. Then suddenly he turned toward me, his expression shifting from calm to deeply serious. Before I could speak, he reached for a small box. James, he began, voice steady but full of emotion. This past year has been the most incredible of my life. You've helped me chase my dreams and reminded me what it means to truly live. You've made every day brighter. Will you marry me? The ring was simple yet beautiful, a platinum band with a small engraving inside. Love heals all. Yes, I whispered, emotion overwhelming me. That night, we celebrated quietly at home, reflecting on how it had all started, from one ordinary checkup to this extraordinary moment, you know. Adrian said softly, I never properly thanked you for choosing me as your doctor that day. I laughed. I think you've thanked me plenty. We stayed up late talking and laughing, reminiscing about how far we had come and dreaming about the future. It wasn't just love anymore. It was partnership, purpose, and peace. Our story had begun in a brightly lit exam room, but it had grown to fill every part of our lives, personal, professional, and everything in between. The next morning, as we officially opened the clinic doors, I watched Adrian greet the first patients with his trademark kindness and calm. Every time our eyes met across the room, there was no fear, no hiding. Just quiet pride and understanding we had built something real. A space for healing. A space for community, and a space shaped by love, respect, and shared purpose.